Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it is Billie Marten. Billie toured with my very dear friends, Elena and Pat, from the band Tennis. And I first met Billie when I was interviewing her partner, Will Taylor, of Flight, for the pod. We do these on video over Zoom. And Billie popped in. And I said to her, actually, I've been dying to have you on the podcast anyway. Now is my official pitch to you. So I loved this conversation. First of all, if you follow Billie, and you probably do if you're listening to this, well, if you don't, please follow her, because much of her Instagram page is her in bookstores. So naturally, I knew I was going to love this conversation. Reading plays such a central role, not just in her existence as a person, but also as a songwriter. And so wherever she goes, wherever she's on tour, she posts pictures of herself in a bookstore. So please go check that out. One of the things that she said to me, and a lot of this conversation was about her frustration that she hasn't written in a while, and that's been really bothering her, that she has not written a song for an extended period of time. And she says, it feels like a phantom habit I once had. It's beyond my control. It's an impulsive physical feeling that I have, and I have to sit and wait for it, that kind of impulsive physical feeling. And it's funny because Will Taylor, her partner, said the same thing to me, that she said she gets a physical tingling where she simply has to write. But she hasn't written in a while. That's been really bothering her. And I'd like to think we had a breakthrough here, because she has said she hasn't written anything in a while. And at some point during our conversation, she opens up her notes app and sees all of these things that she's written over the course of several months. And so I said, you actually have written a lot. You haven't written any songs, but you have written. And so I think maybe we had breakthrough moment there. I'd like to think that as soon as that podcast was over, that recording was over, she went and she wrote. But that brings the point that I talk about a lot, that writers are always writing, even though they may not be putting pen to paper. Some good quirks here. She has, when she writes in her notebook, she has a left-hand page and a right-hand page, where I think the left-hand page is the rough sketches of the things she wants to write about, and then the right-hand page are the lyrics. And she writes diagonally, which is amazing, and we talked about that. So anyway, I will stop talking, only because I want you to listen to this, and I'd love this conversation so much with Billie Marten. And again, Billie's latest album is called Dog-Eared. Have a listen to the pod. I always start with a simple question, and that is, as a writer or songwriter, is it important for you to create in some fashion every day, or do you think it's better not to force things?
Trying to find the answer. Everybody is the answer to that question. This is a good time for me to talk about writing and process, because I'm currently so far away from it that it feels like just this phantom habit that I once had. I'm certainly not writing every day. I certainly can't look at writing in a corporate 9-to-5 way, although that does help a lot of musicians. It's very much beyond my control. An incredibly impulsive physical feeling that I have, that I really just have to sit down and wait for. And that's what I'm currently doing.
Does that cause you anxiety that you have to wait for it, or are you comfortable with that?
sometimes I'm comfortable with it, but I'm comfortable with it if I've just written something, or I've written something in the last 3 months. It's almost like, you know, you've still got petrol in the car and you can still drive a little bit, although you know that it has a limit. But I've been writing things, but I certainly haven't. I think I've written 2 songs this year, which is quite embarrassing for me to say out loud. Find that to be embarrassing, because it makes me not a proper writer, or that's how my brain feels anyway.
When I was a professor, I would always tell my students, now it was very comforting for me also as a writer to think about the writing process is always taking place. If you think about it only taking place when you're writing, then I think you'll get those feelings. But if you think if you the writing process is taking place as you are eating, sleeping, walking, working out, whatever. So do you find that are there a lot of ideas stewing that you just haven't put to paper yet?
Always ideas, as everybody has a million and one notes in their notes app. Um, Annoyingly, the process for me usually begins in somewhere really impractical. Every time. So I get a lot of it when I'm on the plane. That is sort of immediately for me, emotionally volatile space, and everything else is taken away. And I literally cannot move out of my seat when they say put your seatbelt on, don't take it off. So it's almost like, you know, a form of a creative straitjacket for 9 hours. And I do enjoy that. But I get so far, but what I don't have is the audible side of it. Or, I mean, a few times I've sort of muttered into my microphone, but that's as far as it has gone. So that happens a lot. Yeah, public transport, obviously very mindful places, very existential places, and that to me is often the spark, is thinking in that way.
So let's talk about that. And there was an article I read in the Atlantic magazine. I need to go back to it because the article has to do with why it's so easy to cry on airplanes. And it was different from like a bus or a car or a train. It's the airplane. And Elena Moore from Tennis and I were having this conversation about how I'll be watching a movie on an airplane and just start to cry, but it's a movie that would never make me cry if I were watching it here. Um, so what is it about? So what you mentioned existential, what is it about the airplane? And for me at least, before you answer that, for me at least, it is, and I'm the same way, but it's because I know I have to finish what I'm doing when the plane lands. And so for me, it's not existential as much as it is a practical deadline. I've got to stop. But I do find those places to be very fruitful. But so I'd love to know why you think the plane is such a good place for you.
Interesting. I've never thought about it in terms of deadline. That's probably very helpful. You have a finite amount of hours. Why is it so helpful? I think because I'm looking at things in a very sort of nihilistic, practical way, in that I'm taking a life risk because I'm 30,000 feet up in the air. And therefore, I suppose it's sort of a meditative type practice to achieve full presence. Is kind of like put yourself in a position of enormous risk. I mean, the risk isn't enormous, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not even a nervous flyer. But because I'm so separate from the world and I could so easily leave the world at that point, what happens to my brain is a deep tangible love for emotional sensitivity, and those are some of my favorite books. Well, I can't give you any examples now, of course, but it's when a character realizes what they wanted to say to someone, or I always find that I write down kind of my core thoughts and my core self and my core relationship with so and so. You're really kind of labeling and categorizing, and that makes my mind feel very clean and compartmentalized, productive. And that's why you cry at Field of Dreams, which I did the other day. I also watched The Whale on the plane, which
I
is
haven't seen that. Heard that's amazing.
a fucking disaster of a film in a great way. Do not watch it on the plane.
You said something that made a lot of sense to me, and that is that existential. You're putting your trust in two people you can't even see at the front of the airplane. And if you, I don't want to. When I think about that, and I fly all the time for work, every week. Um, but so it's funny. I like what you said. But it's not an awareness of that. It's maybe that unconscious existential thinking that.
Agreeing with it. You've made your peace with it. I'd like to think in moments like that, obviously I'd be terrified, but I'd also be, there's nothing you can do about it. So you may as well make something beautiful.
Are you as productive on a 9-hour train ride?
I've, I've got two modes. I've got reading the Kate Bush biography, listening to old Desert Island Discs. Tennessee Williams is one of my favorites. Thinking on fire, thinking in that way, thinking productively, thinking creatively. And then I'm a big fat slob and I want to eat crisps and watch The Simpsons, which gives me it does give me the same thing, which I suppose is relief. They both give me different forms of relief. And I think a lot of songwriting is about relieving one's questions, pain, exclamations.
Since you mentioned The Simpsons, I've got a quote up here by Conan O'Brien, who and I love his podcast. And I wrote this down because it was so great. And he said, and we can apply this to songwriting. He said a lot of writing involves sitting and thinking and eating donuts. And he just said that last week. And but that's what I was saying is people think that but we have to think about writing that way, that the writing involves not writing. And I find that to be, I don't know, on some level comforting.
It's most of the time not writing, but I tell you what would be great if we were writing. That would be great. I'd have more to show for myself, but I've certainly done a lot of thinking this year. I was discussing with Will last night at a party book launch thing, and there are lots of writers there, writers. In fact, the guy we were talking to wrote Slow Horses. I don't know if you saw that. And we were talking about creativity, and we were just saying how in this modern world of being a writer, it's actually more difficult than ever to write. All we're doing cyclically every year is talking about the thing that we've written and not doing any more writing. And we're just in this sort of stagnant process of not being able to put something down and away until we've exhausted it of its press capabilities, of its audience. And that makes me sad, because I know that for someone like me, I can only write when I'm completely alone. And I think this year I've been alone probably 10 days. And that's not enough time.
So when you say, does that mean you can't write on tour?
Yeah, unfortunately. I've done little bits, but no, I cannot write if I know someone's listening.
My fear as a writer is that when I make the process too rigid, I need to have this. I've got to be in this place. It's got to be this time of day. It prevents me from being more flexible and saying I can write anywhere. And I always struggle with that, okay, the ritualistic part of it, I've got to be in this chair. I've got to, have this thing with me versus the flexibility of, hey, I can write anywhere. So do you think about that, about maybe, trying to write in those other places? Because and for me, that's always the fear, is if I make it too rigid, then it prevents me from being productive.
I do think about that, and I'm certainly not against it. I wouldn't stop it from happening. But having never been in a band, for example, and starting writing when I was so young, it was always a secret, always. And for that reason, I would feel like I was making an inauthentic song or piece of work or whatever. Um, because my true authentic self is the one that can only come out when it's hidden. There's that Japanese riddle, need to look that up, of the three faces, the one that you show everybody, you know, the man that you're buying a sandwich from, the ticket collector on the train, someone drops their bag, that person, and friends and family. And then the second one is your close people, the ones that can see you cry, the ones that know your actual tone of voice, the ones that you can be vulnerable around. And then the third face is just you. And it's not even those versions of you, it's the secret version of you when no one's looking, no one's listening. What are you then? And that for me is kind of what I sit down and write every single time, is a sort of illustration of me getting to grips with who that person is. And I think with that comes a lot of fear and a lot of shame and guilt and sort of, bad feelings. But then coming out the other side of it, and I think lots of people have, what's the word when they also feel the same way? Empathized. Um, with those feelings, because I guess we're not really talking about it because because we can't. But I'm coming out the other side of that. That was very much where it came from in the beginning, the questioning and the searching. And now it's a more joyful representation of who that person might be and getting to know them.
Do you do a lot of journal? Do you journal?
Nope.
That's not. I like that answer because it doesn't sound like there's even, some songwriters say they don't, but they wish they do. I get the sense you have no desire.
I tried doing it years ago. I've kept them. Uh, Someone got in touch with me about making a sort of a book, but really they wanted to just do lyrics mixed with kind of screen scans from my writing books and throughout the years and things like that. So for that reason, I gathered all of my writing books, and that included journals. And then when I did do it, I found that I was only writing down bad things of the day. And it was tapping into a part of myself that shouldn't have had so much power and control.
Hmm.
So reading those for me is actually really painful, and they're in the corner of the room now, and I'm scared to go back in there. But I found for me that journaling is really hard to do without thinking that there's an audience, without thinking that someone's going to read it. Yeah, not for me. And I like reading other people's journals. I love memoirs, and I love um in other people's internal thoughts. But I guess I already have my space for that, and that's in song, so I think I should get one. Try again.
People are very divided on that. And then there's a question of, does the journaling lead to songs, or is the journal completely separate? Because there are people there are so many answers I get to that question. And there are some people that, don't, but wish they do. Others have no desire to start. But again, I think those people who do find that the journaling sometimes allows them, like, it's a deliberate separation from the songwriting, that they don't ever use it as a way to explore song topics.
Well, in response to this publisher asking if we could do a lyrics and photo thing, I said, well, I'm just going to write a book. I'm going to write a proper book, and then we'll publish that one. Like lots of other musicians, lots of other people that aren't writers decide that they can do. So that's been really useful for me. I've sort of been doing it as get immediate thoughts, sit down, go on laptop, stream of consciousness, type it out, don't look at it. And that's brought back loads of childhood memories that I'd completely forgotten about. Small incidental scenarios of the week, that sort of kind of David Sedaris type observational commentary thing, and stuff that I can't fit into song, words that I could never say in a song because they're ugly, and sentence forms that I've never allowed myself to take because they're too long. So yeah, to have an unedited version of me being a writer is really freeing, and I do really like it, but that has to be, as I said before, an instantaneous response to a thought or a memory that I can't forget, or just an immediate feeling. So journals don't work. Well, they do work like that, but it's not for me.
I interviewed the writer Anthony Doerr once. He wrote a book called All the Light We Cannot See. Uh, Great book. And I asked him about writer's block. And he said, I don't believe in writer's block. He said, writer's block is a failure of courage. It's always stuck with me, that idea that don't be, his whole thing is don't be afraid to write. Like, nothing you say is so precious that you can't put it down. And those were words. I mean, that must have been 15 years ago I talked to him, and it still sticks with me, that idea of just getting the stuff down. And I find that that is so important. So I'd love to get your take on that. About that idea. Is writer's block just merely a failure of courage?
Yeah, I do think he's onto something. I think it's uh yeah, stiffen that up, a lip up type rhetoric. I think that can be helpful as a writer, because naturally what writers want to do is express their feelings and be vulnerable and small and be, an object for pity. Or that I find that that's more common than not. I do agree with that. I guess he's right. I'm just looking at my apps. I'm looking at my apps, my notes. The latest thing I have is my credit card pin. Then I have dotted fields and stubborn trees. Nothing.
Where did that come from?
That came from being on the train. Where was I? I was coming back from somewhere. I was visiting Flight on tour. You see, now I look at this, I'm saying I haven't written anything in a whole year, and I'm like, there's something every day. There's something every day. So there we go. And then I pin my favorite quotes at the top. And the first one is from David Berman, who's Purple Mountains.
Yep.
Great interviews from him online. I went into a bit of a hole, and he said, never be afraid to be autobiographical. which sounds like it's the obvious thing. But actually, I think what a lot of writers do is mask and contort and shift meaning and perspectives and points of view. And you don't have to say them. You can say me. You can say you. And I love it in songs where when the writer is talking specifically to a person. I just found that quite useful to remember.
It's funny you say that because I interviewed Dev Hynes about a month ago, and he said, I think his quote was, he said, he's never written a song about anyone else in his life. It's the songs are all about him. He's
Yeah.
never written from another person's perspective.
Yeah. I tried that on the last album and it worked for one song, but can guarantee it's never going to work again. I think some of the best writers are natural storytellers and they have an imagination. I unfortunately do not have that. I'm not gifted with that. So I have to take what I'm given. I take what I was born with, and that is a need to reveal. But it has to be from personal experience.
I'm going to get very specific with the ritual for a second here. When it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
I'm a pen and paper person.
So the next question is color of ink, type of pen. Is that important?
Uh, Used to be really important to me, less so now. Used to have to be the black ruled moleskin soft cover with a uniball black pen, and they were the ones that my dad used to get because he's a copywriter, so I had to have dad's pens. You got one? Yeah.
I have the Energel, Pentel Energel liquid gel.
Yeah, he likes the gel ones. I used to stock bulk buy them on Amazon, but I don't think they even do the pen anymore, which is a sign to move on. Now it will be grab something that's in the house. I find that it's almost a distractor for me. It's an enabler for me to, I get excited about stationery and things like that, visual things, tactile things, and then I don't put anything good in it. So it has to be a nice book. I can't just write on a sticky note or something like that. But no, I'm not precious about it now. I don't like writing in pencil. Yeah.
Why not pencil?
It reminds me of school when you weren't allowed to write in pen. Yeah.
I feel like we're going back to this idea of the preciousness of the process, that if you make it too precious, then because there are songwriters who tell me that deliberately, now again, maybe this is making it precious, but that they can write anywhere, in the back of hotel stationery, on the back of envelopes, because they don't want to put the pressure on, of the fancy notebook. But then I feel like there's no difference there if you're saying, by making it not precious, you're making it precious almost.
Exactly. Just do the thing. Just write down the thing, make the thing. I always find that with physical surroundings, lots of people say, oh, I can only write in the countryside, or I can only write at night, or I mean, I did say I could only write alone, but I've tried to take myself to residential trips many, many times. I've only succeeded. No, because I came home and wrote it after I got home. Yeah, it's never worked for me because I'm in an unfamiliar space. No matter if it's perfect for writing, if there's the most beautiful piano you've ever seen, if the lighting's great, if it's all my favorite things, doesn't matter. It's not your space, and that's why most of the album was written right here or there at the table, and that's where I feel most comfortable. But I've moved houses a lot over the years. I've been in some, not ideal spaces for writing. And London is very volatile in that way. As soon as you move into a house, you're moving out 6 months later. But I think now that my brain knows that I'm staying here for quite some time, that's almost why it doesn't want to write at home, because it knows that it's saving it for the haven.
And you like to write in that room.
I like to write in this room. The walls were white when we moved in, and I knew that it was going to be this specific yellow.
So what is it about that room? I know you have guitars there, but what is it about that room?
That's only for show-off purposes.
And they're, by the way, they are beautifully aligned. I'd love to know how long I mean, did that take hours to set that up perfectly?
Yes. I am proud of my drilling work. You can't tell, but two of them are about to fall out. So if that happens, don't be alarmed.
Yeah, so why that room?
It's got a great big window. Very important.
Yeah, why?
Uh, I speak about windows loads on the last album. That's probably because I was sat there looking through one. I think it's just great for your perspective. I think it's the same thing as what a plane does. If you're looking at a garden, but you're not looking at it through a window, you just think, oh, that's a garden. If you're looking at it through a window, there's an intangibility, there's another life out there. There's a separation between the listener and the speaker. Yeah, it's immediately kind of sentimental, immediately brings on the past or the future. So I just find windows to be really good writing tools.
If you're in that room and it's not happening, do you go to another place in that room? Or do you go to another room?
I tend to give up quite quickly. I have to take something else in. I have to go and watch a film, or I have to read a story because I've not made a good enough story, or I've just not made a story. If we were talking and I'd just written a song, this would be an entirely different conversation. I'd love to know what. Maybe I'll call you after I've written one.
So I know that you said you haven't written many, you've written only a couple this year, but what's your immediate reaction to that? Uh, is it anxiety? Is it because you have written, like you told me, you looking through your notes app and there's all of those ideas on there.
Yeah, but they're not full songs with a
Do
middle
you
eight.
go back? Yeah, but do you go back to those? I mean, do you go back to them for ideas?
Yes, that's how it will happen. If I'm feeling like playing guitar is feeling nice, I'll either have an immediate thought, an immediate subject matter that I need to address, or I'll start collating, take things from the phone, write them down physically. And then in my book, the left page, the left side is always the scrappy side, the diagonal side. I always write diagonally. Words, rhymes, scribbles, and then the right side has to be collected thoughts.
All right, so you can't tell me you read diagonally, and I have to follow up with that because what is about why the diagonal writing? I love that. I've never heard that before.
I had no idea. It just happened, and then it became a thing. And subconsciously, I realized that there was a format that I was following that I hadn't learnt. Uh, it probably comes from studying English and writing essays. I think it's the sort of editing, essay style writing sort of thing. Here are your immediate thoughts. Here are your big bubbles. Then let's break those down. Yeah, and then the right side is respectable.
I'd love to know why that is. Maybe because the diagonal is a deliberate. I feel like this is a therapy session here, but maybe the diagonal is deliberate messiness, right? I mean, that can't be a serious piece of writing if it's diagonal.
Yes. Yes. That's what it is. It's not ready yet. It's not
Yeah.
cooked. It's not golden. And My my dad, when he does the crossword, always taught me to write the words down aside from the puzzle until you absolutely are sure. And the same with Sudoku, he writes the little numbers in the corners before he puts the big number. I guess it's just, yeah, I guess I've been taught not to, because my worst thing in the world is writing something down and having to cross it out. I don't like that.
I think we have a breakthrough. It's a tacit acknowledgement that this thing is not ready. And by writing it diagonally, I'm telling myself it's not ready.
Clever, clever that. Um, I actually have, for my birthday, I got given some John Martin lyrics, and they're just on sort of old-fashioned fax paper, I think. And some of it's in blue Sharpie, disgusting. Some of it's in black Sharpie, and then right at the bottom, there's a bit in pencil, and it looks like an HB pencil, and it looks like he wrote it. He was pressing down. Some in capitals, some not in capitals. None of it in cursive, which is interesting. But that was quite a shock to me because I find him, he's my favorite artist probably. So I find everything that he does to be very beautiful. And that really shocked me to see his process was as menial and modern looking as anything, as a note in an office, you know.
The advantage to me of going back to looking at things I've written in pen or pencil is that it can take me back to that emotional state I was in a lot easier than if I looked at something I had typed.
Well, yeah, there's no tone on a MacBook. Yeah, I certainly noticed a change in handwriting. That's what's really interesting about having all of your writing books. You can tell when you are feeling incredibly tightly wound, because everything's small and precious. You can tell when you are feeling, any emotion.
One of my favorite essays, and reminds me of this, is the author Anne Lamott has an essay called "Shitty First Drafts,"
Mm.
and that I used to teach. It's from her book Bird by Bird. She's still alive, and I used to teach it. But I've always followed that idea that the first draft has to be atrocious,
Yeah.
uh, because I think as a writer, I have no right knowing what something is supposed to look like when I start.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest mistake I can make is say, I know what I want to write about, and I'm gonna get here because it doesn't allow for diversions in thought. So I bow at the altar of that essay, and it's always carried me through that making sure that the first thing I write is awful. So anyway, I'd love to get your take on that. How important is that to you with that process?
I certainly agree in terms of more of the written word, longer prose. I definitely agree with that. And when you realize that you've said the same word 3 times without knowing, um, with this actual songwriting, it's for me, it's more like flying a kite and riding on that. So if the first thing that comes out of my mouth is crappy, then that kite is going down. It needs or like a paper airplane. It has to sort of survive by itself in order to pick up more traction. Um, I have often I start the song with the first line. That sounds stupid, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I have to do it like that. I'm interested in first lines. First lines are usually the biggest confession of the song for me. Like I've said it all in the first line. The rest of the song doesn't really even matter. It's all there. It's like in a film, the exposition is all given to you in the first 5 minutes.
It's so interesting because and again, I've never written a song in my life, but as a prose writer, my whole thing is I start writing wherever the hell I have the most to say. If that's the beginning, it's great. It's usually not because I find that all I need is momentum to get started. So the first thing I write is rarely the beginning. It's just I need to get the ball rolling. And so I don't know where that thing is going to end up.
Sometimes it's fun to put on different writing caps and write intentionally like other people. I don't know if you've ever done that.
I used to teach that as an exercise. It could be a great exercise in writing classes to write in like the Hemingway style or the Dickens style or something like a Virginia Woolf. Pick your, yeah, it could be very productive.
Think something that Van Morrison would.
And I think it's a great Van Morrison imitation, by the way. Um, but it's a great way to get through writer's block
That's
because
really.
you're getting another voice in your head.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because I'm obviously going to write something after this.
That's why I'm here. Um, I've got a great quote from you. This is one I always give songwriters, and it's from Agatha Christie. And she said, "The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes." And this is the one thing I always discuss with songwriters is, and David Byrne said, a car is a good place to write lyrics. Driving occupies one part of the brain, freeing up the other. So the number of songwriters who tell me they get ideas while they are hoovering, gardening, mowing the lawn, cleaning, yeah. How often does that happen?
All the time. That's yeah. It's internally correct. I think that's just how we were wired. I think that's how all the great thinkers started. They all did it by accident. Um, that's how we realized what the stars were. That's how we figured out you could die from heartbreak. And yeah, I've this is why I can't do the residential writing trip or set myself 2 or 3 weeks to go and write because there is nothing else for me to think of. I absolutely agree. I will, yeah, I can support this message.
It's also why we get our best ideas in the shower. I read an article about this. It's the same thing. The eureka moments happen when we're not thinking about eureka moments.
Yeah. What's that phrase? The devil makes work for idle thumbs.
Yes. But again, it's then if I say, okay, I'm going to get an idea, let me go mow the lawn, it's not going to happen. It's always that balance of you can't be aware of it.
I like it. I like the challenge. If it was easy, then we'd all do it. And there's already way too many of us anyway. I like that it is. This is what I'm talking about when it's actual physical tingling feeling for me. It's like something happens in here, in my diaphragm, like in my chest, and I simply have to. I simply have to. And but I like the mystery of it, and I like not understanding it, and I wouldn't have a career if I did, because then I would have written the song. I've said before that I'm just trying to write one song, and they're all just examples of that, but not. I'm currently still in my left-hand page, and the end of my career is when I find the right-hand page. We're supposed to suffer. We are. I think most of art is suffering, and I think we quite like that.
I'm looking over here because I have all these quotes by writers who are saying things that line up perfectly with what you're saying. So, Martin Amis,
Yeah.
a writer's life is half ambition and half anxiety, and there has to be both. It is no good writing a novel and feeling fine, and it is no good writing a whole novel feeling miserable.
Yes. Next.
Perfect, right? Dorothy Parker. I this is one of my favorites because I feel this perfectly. Dorothy Parker said, "I hate writing. I love having written."
I love her so much. Oh, I love her so much. She'd so be on my dinner table. I read her collected poetry works when I was in my probably 17 or 18, so just becoming a woman, and yeah, she's so funny, the best.
But but do you agree with that? I mean, when you're right, do you I mean, I think to myself, I can't wait to go write, but then I'm putting it off. So do you, when you're in the moment, do you enjoy it or do you enjoy having finished more?
Love having finished. I'm on top of the fucking world when I've written a song. And then I go to the pub and I tell everyone I've written a song. And I'm so nice to everyone. And yeah, my demons have left the body. But when I'm actually doing the writing, I think it's more of a excruciating but satisfying process. I would liken it a lot to doing a crossword. You know the answers are within you. Sometimes it's too hard. But you wouldn't do the crossword if you could just, if you could do it there and then easily.
So are you a genre, when it comes to, obviously you're a voracious reader, are you a genre person? Are you an author person? How do you decide what the next book is you're going to read when you finish that last one?
Great question. How fun. I am only an author person if that first one is really, you know, really got the fires going. If I'm not interested in it, what anybody else is saying. I did that with Jonathan Franzen for a while. This year, because I've been thinking about writing a project, I bought 10 to 15 books on more in essay form. So I took essay as the genre, got into Anne Carson and Maggie Nelson and people like that. Mostly I do judge a book by its cover. I think that's really important. And what a waste of a book if the innards don't align with the outer.
Wait, so literally you're judging the book by the cover.
Mm.
I do that too.
Every time. Which is why I didn't read All the Light We Cannot See.
He real before you continue, he told me a great story about, we talked about the ritual, and he said that when he first started writing, he lived in New York and like a second story walk up where it was very loud, and he wore construction grade ear protection so that you couldn't hear the noise. He now lives in Idaho in the mountains with his family where it's quiet and peaceful, but he still has to wear the construction grade ear protection because it's such a part of his ritual. He doesn't realize he's wearing it until he goes to the bathroom and sees himself in the mirror, and he's got that ear protection on.
Brilliant. I love that.
Okay, so I before and I'm the same way, by the way. My first thought when I finish a book is my immediate thought is I need another voice in my head. Which is why I love short story anthologies because they're just, and so I've never been an author person. It's deliberately my first thought is that was a great book, but why do I want to hear that voice again? I know that may not be right, but that's always I think you and I are on the same page there.
I think it takes a truly, truly identifiable reader. I guess it's a personal connection that you have with the writer. But I have no interest in meeting writers. That's interesting to me in a sort of celebrity culture way. I have no interest in getting closer to them. I like, there's lots of, I'm drawn to writers that, I'm drawn to American literature and writers that solely write about the Midwest and sort of familial connections, inane family stories I'm really drawn to when nothing happens at the end of the book, but you've gotten so far in. Elizabeth Strout does that really well. She did the Olive Kitteridge things. But no, when I close that book, that's it. That's it. I don't want to follow them. But then my partner, Will, he was the one that got me into directors for films, which I'd never thought about a day in my life. I knew Tarantino was the blood one. I knew Scorsese was the best one. You know, that was it. But I found that by looking through directors, you then get much more of a sense of film chronology and why they made that film that they did at the time, and as the way that person sees the world. And I think, Ken Loach does that a lot, and I found that I was accidentally drawn to all of his films and didn't know they were all Ken Loach films. So I think there is a lot of argument to be said for finding the writer before the book, but I guess that is, another side of the leaf. They're all good as long as you're reading.
What drew you to the stories about the American Midwest?
I have no idea. I have no idea. It's got nothing to do with me. I wasn't so into the beat poets. I was kind of like, I thought they were kind of arrogant, and I didn't bond with it at school. Well, I suppose it started in the South. It started with East of Eden, and then Carson McCullers, who's one of my favorite authors, so got me, and then traveling America over the past 4 or 5 years, having known nothing about it whatsoever. I think that's done it. So it's a form of education for me at the same time. And now that I've seen a lot of it with my own eyes and lived in an American family home and sort of bumbled about from town to town, driven a fuck ton of miles around the Midwest, it's kind of comforting to me in a way. I would never read something out there that was set in Yorkshire. That would feel really sacrilegious. Yeah, find it comforting. And there's a sort of, to me, they're all kind of like the narrator in Badlands. They all sound like that to me.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug, my book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form, and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.